All right, so we're gonna, I guess, talk about a topic that's going to get more interest once it becomes official. But the Lakers' head coaching job is currently vacant after they separated from Frank Vogel, who, all the reports came out saying unable to make it work with Westbrook. And so now they want a new coach. And there's a list of three that are down to Darvin Ham, Terry Stotts, and Kenny Atkinson, all assistant coaches in some way, shape, or form, or former head coaches. But there's also, murmurs of Doc Rivers sitting there as someone that they want to hold out for. Um, Obviously, we're going to have a quick chat about who we think will be the best person for the job. And, the easiest take is it doesn't matter who gets the job because it just probably isn't going to work, / the superstars will run that. But what I'm going to do out of those three, because I feel like if we're going to go with that, go with the three. I'm going to go with Kenny Atkinson, pretty defensive-minded coach. Obviously took that Brooklyn team to an impressive run. You could put an asterisk on that and say the personality he had didn't have the sense of egos or the status that the current Lakers trio do. But I think the way that the Lakers will have success, because they can revamp their roster again with the minimum contract guys. I think the way that they want to structure this is they want their big three to do as much as possible offensively and help out defensively. And then they want the young guys to kind of do all the hustle stuff. And I think a coach like Kenny Atkinson will optimize those B tier and below players more, while probably understanding that I can't touch the A tier at all, right? Or even the S tier if we're going into that as well. Obviously, what I'm saying is aspirational and in good theory, but I think, we'll probably do a pod later in the year about this, but like the Lakers don't look poised to do much next season either, right? I think a Westbrook trade is probably the most interesting things that could happen to them to push them in a different direction. I don't think the head coaching change is really going to be as significant as maybe the front office thinks that it will. But Kenny Atkinson, I feel like that would make the most sense if they can get the right young players around to buy into the defense.
Look, I guess I pitched this topic to you. Let's have a chat about this. I think I sent you a message like 4 a.m. in the morning. I was reading all the articles on this, in online. Obviously, those three names that you are currently candidates. And firstly, I think it's a telling point here that those three names have been put as the top of the list, but they haven't chosen anyone yet. Okay, because I don't think any of those three are a great fit. Okay, I'm not saying they're not great coaches, and two of them already have head coaching experience and quite respectable track records. Don't get me wrong, okay? But I don't think they're the right fit. Like you said, it's going to be a challenge for whoever comes in to coach the Lakers, the next coach of the Lakers, to get the most out of them and where they're at and what they want to achieve, okay? The other name that was obviously thrown into the hat and was quickly thrown out was Juwan Howard. Okay, they obviously were looking at bringing him across from the college ranks, and he basically said no. All right, that's all the news on that. You spoke about Doc Rivers and obviously finding someone with that sort of reputation, I guess. Obviously, he's got a championship against his name to come over and coach the Lakers. But I've sort of been thinking about, firstly, what sort of coach would you need, okay, at the Lakers? All right, firstly, it's clearly a player-orientated team. Yeah, you've got superstars there that dictate a big part of all the basketball, I guess, happenings, I guess, what happens on the floor and ultimately what happens off the floor as well to a greater extent. So I think definitely it needs to be a player's coach, someone that obviously demands respect, attention of their peers, a former sort of player with a sort of a high basketball IQ. Think players like, say, Chauncey Billups, that obviously is now in Portland, Jay Kidd now in Dallas. They're all champions, obviously, we've got rings against their names, and that sort of background, I think, is sort of what suits the Lakers, and they're the Lakers, they're the LA Lakers. That's the thing as well. It's not some small franchise. So I think the key here is that, and it's always the case with a coach, the coach is always held accountable, firstly and foremost, with any sort of result. Okay. And I think, ultimately that's why Vogel was shown the door. This season they underachieved significantly for what they were hoping to do as the roster names at least dictated, and the payroll no doubt dictated as well, that Vogel didn't achieve those sort of goals. And I think I've got a bit of a perfect candidate here. Someone that obviously is a player's or would be a player's coach, has the basketball IQ, actually is a former MVP, NBA champion as well. He would hold his teammates and the players accountable. Okay, and it's a perfect opportunity here, obviously, for the LA Lakers to obviously offer this player this opportunity to come and coach at the Lakers here and have a sort of a role like Magic Johnson obviously used to. He was a Showtime player back in the day, Hall of Famer, All-Star, superstar. Okay, and now obviously has sort of moved and transitioned into the front office and still part of a not official capacity, but I think nowadays it's obviously still part of the Lakers sort of think tank in that sort of capacity. And I'm suggesting the best coach out there for the LA Lakers next season is LeBron James. I think that they should offer LeBron James the head coaching position, and he will be able to get the most out of this team. He'll be able to pick the right pieces that he needs to be successful. And guess what? If this blows up in the face, not only would we all love watching this, okay, but the Lakers front office have the right person to hold responsible. So I guess in this podcast here, if LeBron James wants to be the head coach of the LA Lakers, I think they should definitely interview him and have a chat to him. I think that could be the best option for him. I've blown your mind.
Yeah, blown my mind, because what I'm trying to do, I'm trying to figure out if you're allowed to be a player coach, right? Because that's really the biggest issue here.
Who says so? Do we have to call Adam Silver? Like, can LeBron be given an additional role here at the Lakers for us?
I mean,
Collective
according to
bargaining
this,
agreement.
Supposedly there are player coaches. I don't know if it's accurate information, but there are
absolutely
player coaches.
Remember Shane Hill was a player coach in the NBL? I know it was a disaster. Don't worry about that part. But he was a player coach for I don't think it was even a whole season in the NBL. And there have been player coaches, obviously, in other sports as well. And LeBron will transition into his final sort of years in the NBA. He wants to play with Bronny, obviously, and Doc Rivers and Austin back in the day. It's a perfect opportunity to give a player that probably is a fringe NBA player, well, at least a leg into the league to begin with. I think this is a win-win. The Lakers got the man right there. They don't need to go hire any of these other candidates. They got the man right there. All right. And I think it's definitely something that they should be looking at.
All right. So it says no because in the collective bargaining agreement, but the last NBA player who did it was Dave Cowens from the Boston Celtics in 1979. So I think something's happened. I think the rationale was it prevents teams from manipulating it by giving the same player 2 contracts or something like that. But technically there's a precedence that's already occurred. And then obviously like great interest generating to be like, well, how look, LeBron's going to be the first player coach in the last 50 years.
So let's write the rule book right now. Nick, do you believe LeBron James could be a successful head coach at the LA Lakers in the 2022-2023 season? Because I do. I clearly do.
Is he playing as well?
Absolutely.
You just say it with such conviction. I just feel because it hasn't been done before. Like one already, like whoever's on the court who's running the offense is sort of like the coach anyway. But the conflict of interest is, LeBron's been quite notorious for laxing on defense and then blaming other people, right? There's compilations out there of him just like putting his hands on, like pointing at people, as he lets his man backdoor cut or something like that. And he gets very frustrated. From a chemistry standpoint, that'd be really hard to have the person who's never held accountable from other people holding himself accountable, which he wouldn't do, and holding you accountable. If he's also the GM, right, like he's going to just request all these random trays. It doesn't work. I think
I didn't say give him the GM job. I said give him the coaching job. Rob Pelinka is still the GM, but clearly the superstars dictate a lot of the path that these Lakers will take. That's the reality. We all know that. Okay. And I think that's the catch here.
I hate it. I don't. It's not.
Kenny
It's.
Atkinson's for you. Is that Kenny Atkinson?
I think statistically speaking, if you were to bet on whose outcome can happen, I have a better odds than you do. I mean, obviously, could it be? Can LeBron retire and then coach and then come back from retirement and then play? Maybe. Yeah, look, great clickbait. I just don't think it's going to play out the way you want it to.
Fine. We'll just have to imagine it
Agree to
in our
disagree.
dreams. So we have now clarified with our timeout that as of the 1984-85 NBA season, the collective bargaining agreement obviously prohibits teams from employing a player coach. Yeah, so thank you for bringing that fact up earlier, Nick. So let's think about this, because as you gathered, I'm highly motivated to consider LeBron as a coach. So the Lakers, if they want to listen to Fauzi down here in Melbourne, okay, because this is a great consideration point for Rob Pelinka and Jeannie Buss to think about. That's the reality of this whole podcast that I'm putting my Wednesday evening aside for, is that they could simply hire a coach, but LeBron James can still call the shots, because it would still be the best interest for the Lakers to have someone of his stature, okay, and his pedigree and his experience to take this Lakers team to where they want to go, or not. That's the point, okay? Because he will still, and he will always, ultimately, as far as I'm concerned, want to be that alpha player, okay? He's not going to be a player like D Wade or Vince Carter or Paul Pierce that sort of slides away into the limelight. In that sense, he will be your MJ or your Kobe. He will be number one until that last game that he plays, okay? And for them to continue to build this team around him and the current contracts and whatever else they can find in the offseason from the free agency pool and any other young talents in the G League and so on and so forth, okay? LeBron is still the best man to lead that team, whether it's officially as a player coach or just as a player that does coach.
Look, maybe what you're referencing is like the Brooklyn situation, right? Where there's kind of an understanding that Steve Nash really isn't the head coach and it's all about good vibes with Kevin Durant and Kyrie and kind of what they want to do. So maybe if you were referencing like let LeBron kind of just take over the duties, but have some dude employed to call timeouts when he tells him to call a timeout, then yeah, maybe that has some merit. I just don't think, it's no disrespect to LeBron's genius. It's just that the Lakers roster is not able to be put in the position I think they wanted to. And I just think, he played a great season. Like, this current NBA season is yet to conclude. It wasn't enough, right? And he was controlling as much as possible. And you can say that the AD injury prevented them from getting the playoffs. Obviously not getting time to get Westbrook integrated. Was Westbrook really butting heads with Frank Vogel that much, or is he just unable to relinquish? I just don't see, I can't see what you're seeing on this. I can't see LeBron just magically fixing their issues. All right. It's kind of, the Chris Paul effect is a nice one to reference, right? Where he can come in and control the tempo, kind of organize everything. But you could make a case and say how the Suns' downfall occurred was the fact that when he stopped being productive, that the whole team just collapses. And it's not to say LeBron's going to collapse, but if LeBron goes down, that whole exercise becomes pointless. Obviously, his aspirations are championship or bust. It's, it can't come from his mouth. It's. You've got me a little flabbergasted with this topic. I'm not going to lie. It's just it's a good theory, right? And I'm sure if you log on to 2K at some point, you can try this out and see what happens. But yeah, it's not going to happen in reality. I'm sorry.